So we have some potentially terrible news depending on who you ask about Solo Leveling Arise. So we're going to talk about it here today. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on everything related to this, and I'll probably come back and do a community response video sometime in the next couple of days. So be sure to air out all of your grievances or concerns in the comments below. That being said, if this is your first time here, make sure you subscribe for more Solo Leveling Arise content like news, gameplay, showcases, etc. All right. So Alpha Leaker, one of the I just say that he's the main leaker that we have for this game, posted, "I'm so happy to see that the devs are considering adding PvP. It's very, very needed for the game to survive and mainly maintain the whale population. I can see why people complaining about it being unbalanced. It's a gacha game. Why would it be? Also, you are not forced to play PvP if it's added." So I like that he added that last couple of lines there to kind of quell the nerves. And I will talk about that a little bit too. We're also going to read some of the replies here. But now that you know the topic, other than just reading the title, what do you think? Should they add PvP to Solo Leveling Arise? Should they not? Should they stay away from it? Anytime a game that doesn't launch with PvP gets PvP added, I will tell you, it is always like 90% of the replies I see or the community interaction I see is negative. It'll kill the game. This is bad for the game, this and that. So that is typically how people will feel, and that's how people feel in his replies to this post as well. And I'm sure a lot of the comments I've already gotten are of the same ilk, right? So that's kind of a typical thing as well. Really quick, I do a really bad job of promoting this, but make sure you do support me through the content creator program linked down below. We're trying to hit 300 before the end of the season. Pretty lofty, but we'll see what happens. I do a terrible job promoting this, and I will be doing so better going forward. But anyone that isn't already supporting, make sure you do support. If you enjoy my content, I'd appreciate it big time. I know that Zaf is like, he's cannibalizing all the supporters. I gotta talk to him to see how he's doing that. It's crazy. What? It's crazy. Shout out to him over there. But yeah, so also if you do support, you can get 1,000 Soul Essence, a bunch of other stuff from me sent directly to your in-game gift box. I recently sent out some stuff yesterday. I got a few guys that need to get, like 5 other people that need to get theirs that I haven't done yet. So my thoughts on this. So let's rewind a little bit back to, and I'll pull up the game for this. Back to the video that I did recently where I covered the Nato situation, where she was basically saying that, and this was met with a lot of like, oh, boo-hoo whale, right? She was basically saying that the game is basically too easy at a point where, like, you spend too much, the game gets a little bit too easy, you kind of complete everything without much trouble, even the harder content, you're still pushing through, and like, I can understand that idea, right? I can understand it, but at the end of the day, like I said, the game isn't only made for the top 0.1% that are going to be able to spend the way that she was able to spend on the game. So no disrespect to her, obviously, but that's just the reality, right? So that's not really what was going on here. And so she left, and also I think some of that too is maybe just lack of enjoyment, lack of, just enjoying the game and just the way the game's being handled, etc. Obviously all of that matters. And I'm sure that she's not the only Kraken. We won't say whale, because I like to say whale, guppy, Kraken, right? We'll say Kraken. I'm sure that she's not the only Kraken that left the game over the course of the last several months, just because of the fact that it wasn't performing the way that they wanted it to with the in-game content, right? I'm sure that a lot of people felt similarly to her. Even if they spent a third of what she spent, they probably were still able to clear pretty much everything with relative ease. And so that's kind of one of the things that I want to kind of point out. So if you add PvP into this game, you immediately alleviate a lot of the concern that a lot of big spenders would have, because to be completely blunt with you, if it wasn't already clear, if you didn't already know, part of the reason why PvP exists in gacha games is so it can be unbalanced. It's meant to be unbalanced, right? They'll try to dress it up and say, oh, we're going to balance change this character because we want this character to perform better, blah, 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 blah. Who cares, right? They'll dress it up. But innately, there is a disadvantage to a player that is not spending money because they don't have the resources to be able to get dupes, right? To be able to duplicate the progression on their characters the way that somebody else could. And so ultimately, if you're a whale in that environment, or even just a spender, you've got an advantage. But if you're like a Kraken or whale, whatever, in that environment, where you're automatically at a huge advantage, they play the game at that point to see that advantage, to see the big numbers go boom, to beat up on the free-to-play players or the guppies down there, the super-duper light spenders. Like, that's where they're playing the game for at that point, where they're trying to just get that enjoyment out of being able to do that. So, in that sense, adding PvP into the game is arguably one of the best decisions that they can make, because it will allow for those players to find a bit of solace in playing the game. For example, I'm not sure, I can't speak for her, but I'm not sure that like she would have left the game if it had PvP by default, because at least that's a constant stream that she could go to. That brings me to my next point. Having PvP in a gacha game is low-key really good. Why? So let me just I'm going through the points here, but I'll double back, I promise. And I'll also talk about the negatives. It's pretty good. Why? Because even though it's unbalanced, depending on how it's handled, it could be good because it's a constant form of content that's available to everyone to play. You don't have to wait on new events or new this and that to be able to play the game. Because ultimately, inevitably, when you play a gacha game enough, whether you spend money or not, eventually you get to a point where it's like, okay, I'm just kind of logging in once or twice a day, waiting for the next event to come out because I've completed all the story. I've completed pretty much everything that there is to complete in this game, and I'm just waiting for new stuff, and then I'll play the new stuff, and then they'll add more new stuff, and I'll play that, and then I'm just kind of waiting. So you get to, after like, and this probably is like a year, 2 years, it depends, right? But you ultimately get to that same similar point where you get to doing that. So that's one of the things that I'll say. I don't really care about this. They're just gonna auto this, so I'm just gonna put them on auto. If you were watching me, like, what is he doing? I'm just trying to have background stuff while also completing some dailies. So ultimately, you get to that point, right? So like, you don't ever have to deal with that with PvP. And then also selfishly, as a content creator, it's also kind of nice. If you go back to my Legends content, Legends, I've got thousands of videos of Legends on my channel, Dragon Ball Legends, if you're not familiar. And most of them were just PvP videos because it was a constant stream that I could go to every single day. And I'm sure that if you look at any other content creator that does videos on a gacha game that has PvP, they are probably hardcore in PvP. So it is what it is. Anyway, so there are positives to it. But what are the negatives? What are the negatives? Well, like I said, players will feel like there is, again, the opposite direction, where they're feeling like they're put in a position to be preyed on by these spenders. And where it really gets bad is if it's handled in a situation or in a way where you have to play PvP, right? And they're going to incentivize you. Make no mistake, they're going to incentivize you by putting good rewards in there, etc. But do you have to play it to be able to continue to progress? I mean, technically the answer will always be no, but is it more worthwhile to you to get your butt beat a few times and play it versus just ignoring the mode? Like, are they going to put, I don't know, a free 25 custom draw tickets or just regular rate-up draw tickets in there every other week? Like, that you can't miss that. Like, you can't miss that. That's too good. In fact, I doubt they'll even do 10. But you can't miss that. That's too good. So that's the type of situation where it could be problematic. That's a good thing and a bad thing, but it's bad because you feel like you've got another thing that you have to participate in, and oh my God, he needs help. And oh my God, he needs help. So that's one thing too. We also have a lot of critics that'll say, well, this is just going to kill the game. I'm not so sure how it kills a game, in my own opinion, because like I said, wow, Otto, seriously, your top spenders are the ones that you want to keep happiest. Don't get me wrong. You want to keep your entire player base happy, but you want your top spenders happiest, if that makes sense, right? Everybody matters. Don't let anybody tell you like a free player doesn't matter, things like that. It's just what matters more at that point. The game doesn't function without both. And part of that is that in a situation where there is PvP, like I said earlier, you need the opposite side because whales don't want to play whales. I mean, they might, but they arguably aren't trying to play whales nonstop, right? You need the opposite side of the spectrum too. So that's where that's valuable, right? So let's go out of here. I wanted to try to help Janu, but I'll figure out this later because I've got to actually lock in on this. I want to kind of see some of the replies, and that'll also help me springboard while I talk about some of the replies people had because I was working off the top of my head. But once again, if you were enjoying the video, make sure you hit that thumbs up. I don't know if I formally announced it, but I am in terms of my stance on this, I will take the wait and see approach, because I was talking about how it's handled. If I don't, for one, I have no clue how you put PvP in this game. I have no clue. Or is it just regular combat? Is that what they're going to? I mean, that's probably the easiest way to do it. But this game has so many bugs and issues, I'm not even confident that this game can support multiplayer PvP. Like, I'm not even confident in that. I'm so disappointed that the guild boss, for example, isn't like co-op. I don't understand why there isn't co-op in this game. It's such an easy thing, too. Like, you don't even need PvP half the time if you could put co-op, right? So, but even that is susceptible to the whale thing that I talked about in the beginning of the video with Nato and stuff, or Kraken, right? So, I just don't know. I don't know if this game can handle it, like, physically. I mean, ultimately, I'm sure they could code it to get to the point where it's fine, right? I'm not, like, super duper concerned about it, but I'm not super confident because of the recent stuff that they've got going on in the game. So let's see the replies here. Some of the best revenue-wise games and long-lasting in the industry, FGO and Dokkan, for example, do not have PvP. That's a good point. SLA, a game with lots of players and therefore lots of whales. Adding PvP would be a death sentence. I mean, you could look at this either way. I mean, yeah, games are successful without it, but games are also successful with it. It doesn't mean that your game will innately be less successful if you have PvP, right? I think the big problem is adding PvP in post-launch, right? I think that's the problem. Like, you would ideally like to have PvP on launch. Alpha replied saying there's already a lot of whales leaving the game. That's fair. Because the disparities between a free-to-play account to a whale would be far too much, and therefore free-to-play players would avoid this mode. But avoiding PvP would mean losing possibly versus important resources. So either way, free-to-plays would be screwed. I don't understand some of the free-to-play player base. I get that they want to enjoy a free game without spending a cent on it, but complaining about PvP or hard content, which they couldn't beat on their first try. Come on now. There has to be challenging and rewarding content for whales too. Yeah, so I think it's really easy to straddle the fence, and I'm not saying this like to disparage this guy. I think it's really easy to straddle the fence. I just spent the last 10 minutes doing it because there is reasons why both sides would be happier or upset with it. And the money, time, and energy will come out of the blue, or maybe will have to be directed from content budget. You want to wait double the time for new chapters, Dungeon and Hunters. I don't really, so like that's not a huge deal. Because a lot of times games have had a lot of this stuff in production already. Like, they're still finishing up stuff by the time they launch it, but they've got a lot of this stuff already on their test servers, and they're like so far ahead of the curve that I'm not too worried about this. Yeah, it kind of matters, and I'm sure they would divert resources to make this happen, but I don't think it really matters a ton. PvP after the initial push will require zero attention from any artist department, so no, it won't affect other stuff like chapters. Yeah, that's fair. After it's launched, it's fine. The whole balance had to be adjusted, monitored, and adjusted over and over again for every bracket, after every new hunter added, and so on. Alone, the damage number, skills, and weapons would be a nightmare to be tuned. Majority of skills still auto-aim. Okay, so that's a good point. I don't really think a lot of that takes a ton of time, because you're just looking at data at that point. I don't really think that takes more than, I don't want to quantify how much time. I don't want to say like a week or 2 weeks, but I don't think it takes a month to figure this out, right? It's just more or less something you have to pay attention to if you're Netmarble. But the question is really, he's talking about skills and weapons and damage number. What type of, like, is it like a turn-based PvP? Would they dare do something like that? I will give this game props. It's not something that other games don't do. It's just a little bit less common, but this game does have actual mini games. It's not the biggest deal. Don't get me wrong. It's just a lot of games don't ever venture. They actually expressly have told me, some of the devs for some of these other games, that they don't want to put alternative ways to play their game within their game. They want to stay on one path. And so if you've been around for Dokkan, and this is not only who I'm talking about, but they are also in this same bracket that I'm talking about, Dokkan or Legends, they oftentimes do like really cool concepts for April Fools. Like they did, Dragon Ball Legends did like a racing game one, and it's like, dude, add this as a goddamn mini game in the game. I don't care if the app jumps 5 gigabytes. I don't care. That's not a me problem. I'm sure it's a problem for some people. I'm sorry if that's you, but I don't care. Add the freaking racing game. And they're like, no, we don't really want that because we want it to be its own thing, what it is. And if we were going to make a racing game, it would just be its own separate individual game, right? So you get the point. This game does have mini games. My only problem with the mini games, I swear to God, that tank tower thing is bugged to all hell. I will drop it right on top and it'll fall. I swear it's bugged. Anyway, is anybody else feeling the same way? I swear it is. But that is a props to them. They have those, and maybe they would be willing to create some sort of alternative way to play the game using your same characters. The only problem is if they do that, this is a trap that a lot of games will fall down. When they introduce new game modes, they will try to create characters that are good in those game modes, and they'll start tagging characters saying, oh, they do all this stuff, but in, let's say, PvP. But in PvP, they also get this bonus to make them super good in PvP, but normal outside of the PvP. That's the only problem I also have. I'm not really sure. But, like, what do you guys think? Would there be an alternative way to play? I have no idea. If rewards are huge, you're forced to play. Have people not played 7 Deadly Sins Grand Cross? Netmarble knows how to do PvP. Last time I played Grand Cross, it was a lot of bots in PvP. Like, the first few tiers, I don't remember how they call it there, but the first few tiers of ranking up was just all bots. But I feel like that's the same for a lot of games, though. But if he's saying Netmarble does PvP good, I haven't last time I played was when their first 2 original characters were initially released, so it's been years. But if they're good at managing PvP, then sure. As a free-to-play, people complaining about whales and gacha games always seemed stupid to me. Like, don't tell me if you had that much money, you'd be doing the same in a game you like so much. So this is partly like people. There's a bracket of people that play the game that simply can't understand. That don't agree with Vajiro here, and they simply can't understand why people would spend money on this game because they don't value spending money on any gacha game over doing something else or spending the money IRL. Like there is the whole like mindset of, oh, if the game closes, you lost all that. And this my rebuttal to that, it's a little bit different for a content creator because the way that it works for us, we're making money off of it. So it's different. You can never quantify how much somebody is spending versus how much they're making on content back if they're an established creator anyway. But even if I wasn't a creator and I was spending money, like I was initially way 10 years ago with Dokkan, damn near 10 years ago when it first came out, before I started going hard on content, I would spend money. I have bad stories of like blowing my entire check because I'm just getting into gachas and I'm not sure the rates are like 1%, and I'm like dying here. Like they're less than that for the new character, and I'm dying. They're like 0.3 or some stuff for the new character. I don't know what it is. They're terrible, and I really regretted that shit. Just got into gachas, right? That was when they were first becoming popular in this part of the world, about 10 years ago. And some people will say there's no reason to do that, but at the end of the day, my rebuttal is, if it's something you enjoy, you can spend money on it. If it's a hobby for you, spend money on it. Who gives a crap if you have access to it 10 years from now? That doesn't matter to me. That doesn't matter to me. Some people it does, and I get it. It's almost like the physical versus digital thing, right? Almost. But if you got enjoyment in the moment out of your hobby, and you've got fond memories of your hobby, that's fine with me. That's enough for me. And I'm sure a lot of people that spend feel the same way. Also, free-to-play versus whale thing, like I mentioned earlier, you need both ecosystems for a game to function. So I never really got, aside from like PvP, I never really got like shaming whales or anything like that. No, PvP that will kill the game is absolutely illegal. It's like a Genshin Impact game because better Netmarble has redeemed Hoyoverse, so I don't know what he's talking about. Should be fun. I don't see solo leveling lasting without PvP. I'm sure they'll add a Guild Wars in the future. I just hope they do it like 7 Deadly Sins PvP. Okay, Minato seems to be on that side. No, PvP will kill the game. Okay, that's the last reply that we got here. There was and this all came from a dev live stream earlier, so I didn't get the chance to cover it, but let's see the reply here. Agree, future whale to play. Let's go rage quit. Okay. So what do you guys think? Post down below. Are you for or against? And like I said, make sure you support, and I'll be back soon.